Rebecca Brewster, head of ATRI, American Trucking Research Institute, leads the think tank of American trucking. Well, in this time, it was a great opportunity to say what have they seen, both as the developing changes in trucking, the effects of COVID-19, as well as ongoing into the future, lasting impacts. Rebecca was kind enough to share her insights with us, and this is what she had to say. Rebecca, from your perspective at ATRI, the think tank of American trucking, what do you see as the impact today of the COVID-19, and as well as see the near-term impact of what it will have?
Well, we've had a real bird's eye view of what's been happening in the trucking industry using our truck GPS data set, Doug. As you're aware, ATRI has a data set of GPS data that is represented by more than 1 million commercial trucks, and it comes into ATRI in real time, and so we're able to do a host of analyses. And so the first thing we looked at was what was occurring to the supply chain or in the supply chain as a result of the reduced traffic with all the stay-at-home orders. So we took a week of data from March of this year and compared that data to the same week in March in 19 and in 2018. And we used data from 4 of our top truck bottlenecks, the annual analysis we do. And the results were really amazing. I mean, here in Atlanta, Spaghetti Junction is typically, or this year was the #2 truck bottleneck in the entire country. And during the afternoon rush hour at that location, we see truck speeds averaging 14 miles per hour. Really, really horrific congestion. This third week in March this year, with everyone staying at home and reduced number of cars on the road, we saw truck speeds averaging 53 miles per hour in the afternoon rush hour. Similar results at some other locations we looked at, although it was interesting. Now, again, this was the third week in March, but we looked at a section of I-495 in Queens where afternoon rush hour speeds for trucks are typically around 16 miles per hour at that location. Third week in March this year, they had more than doubled, but they had only gone to 38 miles per hour. So even in the third week in March, right outside of New York City, there was still a lot of other traffic congestion slowing things down. But certainly if we repeated that analysis now, given what's gone on in New York City, I think we would see a little different picture.
Excellent. And I think you've also done an analysis of the amount of truck transportation for, I believe it was 9 states?
We looked at 6 states, actually.
6 states, yeah.
And for this particular analysis, again, using the truck GPS data set, we created an index with the base of the baseline being the first week in February. And we looked at truck activity through the second week in April across 6 states. And it was very interesting because in all of those states that we looked at, we saw an initial ramp up in truck activity that was commensurate with what we saw in the headlines: panic buying, let's go get the toilet paper, let's go get the hand sanitizer, let's go stock up on canned goods. And so that was represented in the GPS data in increased truck activity across all 6 states. But then after that, we've really seen truck activity slow down. And so, for instance, in California, which was one of the first states to implement a stay-at-home order, we saw that decrease in truck activity occur the first of among the states we looked at. And across the states we're looking at, California, Illinois, Florida, New York, we're seeing truck activity down anywhere from 8 to 10% from the first week of February of this year to the second week in April of this year. So some fairly dramatic decreases in truck activity.
With regard to the speed study, Rebecca, at the various bottlenecks, your perspective, how does that bode for the need for infrastructure?
Well, certainly it makes a very compelling case that if we can create the capacity, whether that capacity comes from reducing the number of other vehicles on the road or expanding the infrastructure, we're going to get some positive impacts on the supply chain through those increased truck speeds. When I think about all that those truck bottlenecks mean for the supply chain, that's truck drivers wasting time on their hours of service. That's wear and tear on a vehicle. Those are environmental impacts. And with all the cars off the road, all of those impacts are gone for a short term. Now, Will those come back as soon as the cars come back? Absolutely. And even in our truck activity analysis, at the latter tail of this, for instance, in New York, we started to see truck activity start to creep up just a little bit. So that's good. I mean, that's what we need to see for the economy. But it's a fascinating story to watch through the truck GPS data to better understand how this pandemic is impacting the supply chain.
With regard to ATRI and the studies you do, any particular, besides what you've done, that ATRI said this is a unique situation, gives us an opportunity to study certain things?
Absolutely. Doug, the analysis we're working on finalizing now and working on the report was a joint survey that we conducted with OIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Driver Association Foundation, also a member of ATRI's Research Advisory Committee. We capitalized on this opportunity to really understand what this means for the supply chain, particularly what it means for drivers. And so in March, we launched this joint survey with OIDA. Had a tremendous response. Between OIDA and ATRI, I think we have over 4,000 responses to the survey. So those numbers are being crunched now, and I'm hoping that the draft final report is in my inbox this afternoon, because we'd like to have it released this week.
Fantastic. And from the, the position you sit at in terms of the research, the analysis, your thoughts in terms of the future impact, the lasting impact we're going to have coming out of this whole situation?
Well, I think you hit on one of the longer term features of this, and that really is to understand how critical the need for infrastructure is, and how we really have to focus on infrastructure, because when we see changes to the infrastructure, whether that's a reduced number of cars or improvements to the infrastructure, we really do see the supply chain operate a lot more efficiently. We talk a lot in the trucking industry about the driver shortage, and certainly one of the things I believe that is a pressure on that driver shortage is all the traffic congestion in this country. Who wants a job where every day you're going to sit stuck in traffic and deal with that stress and that wear and tear on yourself physically? If we can find a way to unchoke those bottlenecks, if you will, I think not only will the supply chain and the economy operate much more efficiently, but it'll help us recruit and retain drivers.
You think this will have a lasting impact also in terms of the last mile and the reliance that people have on right to the door service?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at the news headlines of companies that are starting to increase use of drones to deliver pharmaceuticals to senior communities. I mean, this is really going to change that dynamic. But I think one thing that is not going to change, and that's the nation's reliance on trucking. I mean, from everything from the food warehouses to the grocery store, getting medical supplies to hospitals, all of that has to be done on a truck. And so I think, as I've said before, if there is a silver lining to this whole situation, it's the fact that a wonderfully positive light has been shown on the trucking industry and how valuable the men and women who drive trucks every day are to this nation at large.
Rebecca, thank you for sharing your time and your insights on this.
Thanks, Doug. Have a great day.
Thank you, too.